All right, here we go. Hi, welcome to the Hypno 24/7 Live Network. Greg Beckett here, motivational hypnotist. Another episode of Time to Get Unstuck. I have a great guest today, and as you know, this show is about moving forward, not being really unstuck, because we got to move into the positive. So we take words from moving forward and change from my journey and clients and friends that I know, and use it as the topic for the guest, who today is the wonderful Micaela Bellopede Olivera. Wait, give me the last name. Olivera. You see, I knew I'd get it out somehow. She is an author, a speaker, and a healer, and someone that I've known for a few years, and is someone that I believe walks their talk. So it's always nice to have those guests on, though I think all my guests are that way, but especially her. She has some story and things to tell. And the word today that we're going to talk about is happiness.
Yay.
Hi.
Hi.
That was a lot to get out before I talked to you, but thank you for your patience.
Hi, Greg. Hi, everybody.
So happiness.
Happiness.
A big mouthful of a word.
Huh.
Or not. What's, you know, it's everybody has their own perception or take on it. So you actually have a book talking about getting to happiness, yes?
Yes.
So
how I got to happiness.
So what is the, you know, we were talking a little bit before, what's the biggest question, the most common question you get about happiness?
Well, I get a lot of questions about manifesting and how I manifested the life that I dreamed of, and in many different areas. And my answer is always related to happiness, which is that all of us, including me, really have to get to a place where we're happy without any of it. And so I write and teach and talk a lot about how did I become really happy without having any of the stuff that I have now. And that helps me really be grateful once it came. So that's a journey, and I had to get unstuck in a lot of areas in order to let go of being happy once I got it. That's where I see a lot of people stuck, is they say, I'll be happy when I have X, or when I manifest this, or when I meet, you know, the one. Right. And my answer is always that happiness is inside job, and the stuff outside is just external.
So you're saying that people really look at it from a backwards way or an inverted way, right?
Absolutely.
They think if they get something, they're going to be happy, but but it's really about being happy even before you get it, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that even if you got what you wanted, there's some people that manifest things, but they don't have the ability or the tools to hold on to it. So, right. I mean, how many stories how many people could we think of right now that maybe they got their dream job, or they met the perfect person, or they even had, let's say, a child, and then all the baggage that they had, all the unhappiness and the gripes, that just follows us everywhere. Right. So that's what we say, you may get what you want, but keeping it and being happy with it and satisfied is a whole other skill set.
Is that almost like preparing for true happiness?
No, absolutely. I think that there's absolutely two different skill sets between manifesting something and holding it. That's I mean, we could like literally teach two different classes on those things. And right now a lot of people are talking about manifesting, but not a lot of people are really teaching or practicing, well, what am I going to do once I get to the top of the mountain? How am I going to stay happy in my marriage for 10, 20, 30, 40 years? How am I going to be the best parent I can be? These are totally different skills.
So I know this is going to be an odd analogy, but it's kind of reality-based for some people. There's people that play the lotto.
Yes.
And they don't have much. They've just never had much in their life, and that's cool, you know, but they dream of the lotto. But they don't prepare for what happens once they get the lotto. So they win the lotto, and then after a few years, because they're still living the same way of poverty mentality or how to hold on to or become that person, they end up losing it all to whatever circumstances within a few years because they didn't prepare for what they were manifesting of winning the lotto.
That's beautiful that you brought that example, because it's actually in my book. I actually put those links in 2 different chapters. It's not just several years. They actually did a scientific study where they followed lotto winners.
They did.
And there were 2 things within 1 year that went back to the baseline. One is the money level that they had, they went right back to, and the happiness level. No joke. I don't remember which chapter it is. I think it's one of the chapters around money, but I kept stressing that in my writing, that just because you get something doesn't mean you're going to be happy once you get it. What we call, it's called a set point. For example, with money, we're talking about lottery winners.
Mm-hmm.
You have a money set point, and it's kind of like a glass ceiling. So what happens with these people, let's say their set point where they feel comfortable with is like, I don't know, $60,000 a year, US dollars. Okay. And let's say they win, I don't know, 5 million.
Mm-hmm.
So the person that spends is going to still spend the same way. So if they're overspenders and they're in debt, they're going to do the exact same behavior when they have the lottery money. And if they're like hoarders, savers, oh, I can't spend, the world is full of lack, the exact same thing is going to happen. And then they'll just manifest some chaos to lose it all.
So could we transfer that, all that analogy and all that science or study into the same thing about happiness? Meaning,
Absolutely.
Let's say they got the person of their dreams that they felt was of their dreams that would make them happy to marry or to be in a long-term relationship that they think or whatever, and suddenly they don't know how to communicate because they were never communicators, or they don't know how to share, or they don't know how to express themselves, or how to argue well, because there's a skill to.
The one thing that came to my mind that they really don't have, that I see so much, as I was a teacher for 30 years, and I used to see this in my students, patience. Yes, I mean, you and I are a little bit. I wouldn't say we're younger. No, we're not. I don't like to use that word older, but as you get wiser, you start to realize that in order to be in a long-term relationship, forgiveness is huge. I would say it's the #1 skill. Patience
on both sides.
Yeah, absolutely.
On both sides.
We can't expect our partner to do anything really.
Well, I'm saying being patient. Right, but I'm saying being patient with ourselves and with the other person.
Absolutely. And
that's what I mean by both sides. And that's both within yourself. So, or forgiveness of self for things and forgiveness of others.
Absolutely. But that's the really, so much of what I talk about, especially for women, is, for example, worthiness and self-care. I mean, I can't tell you how much I have talked about in the last year about taking care of ourselves. There's this whole, phenomenon. We're talking about getting unstuck. Well, let's talk about people pleasing for a second. There's a place where I would like to see a lot of people become unstuck. And I wrote a lot about how when I hit about my late 40s, it started when I was about 40, but as I got, in towards 50, I really, really started to embrace the word no. So if we're going to talk about happiness, that has to be part of the conversation.
Yes, absolutely.
I actually cannot be happy if I'm trying to please everyone else all the time, because I will not honor my own truth. So, for example, I actually do happy very well, hence me writing about it. But before I became that person, I actually had to decide, okay, so what are the things that make me happy? And what are maybe the things in my life or the people around me that are kind of in the way of that?
Right.
So let's say, let me give you an example. For example, I'm an empath. And I study a lot of different forms of spirituality and prayer, and there's some people call it woo-woo stuff.
Hey, we all have our ways.
This is a show for hypnotherapy. People like
people interested in it, or people that are hypnotized. So yes, we all have our ways.
Right, but I had to really look around me and ask myself, am I surrounding myself with people who get me, understand me? What's the other word?
Let me ask you this, because they're thinking
accept me, acceptance,
right.
acceptance. And when I realized, if you're a person that, really knows something that makes you happy, but everyone around you, I'll give you a perfect example of this. I know a painter, no names mentioned, but I know somebody who's fabulously talented at painting, beautiful soul, doesn't paint anymore, hasn't painted in 9 years. It's breaking that person's spirit, breaking their health. Why? Because they were surrounded by people that didn't appreciate being an artist. Go get a serious job. Go and work in insurance. No, nothing wrong with working in insurance, but for somebody who's a painter, that is never going to be a recipe for happiness. Never. So if I'm going to say anything about happiness, I have to really, really emphasize for people, you have to be able to say no. Because it's about honoring what makes me happy. And I think that that's also a really important skill, to be able to say, you know what, my happiness is important. I have to cut some cords. I have to walk away from some toxic relationship. So we're talking about getting unstuck. There it is.
Right. And I read something the other day, longevity of a relationship does not mean loyalty or anything else. It doesn't, just because you've known someone for a long time, doesn't mean that that's something you have to keep if they still don't understand you.
Oh, well, think about how many people are dead in their marriage.
Yeah. Yeah.
They just stay married for a multitude of reasons, but they're not on fire with happiness or joy.
Or sometimes not even friendship.
Yeah, well, I know quite a few people, being in the age group that I am, I know quite a few people that say that their spouses are their roommates.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing, we're not here to talk about sexuality, but, I'll just throw it in there for a second. When your happiness dies, so do a lot of other things. Passion and happiness, are cousins of each other. And so when I don't have any happiness and I don't have any passion, then all of my close relationships are going to really kind of just fizzle out. So you could stay in them, but they wouldn't be full of excitement, passion, possibility.
Let me ask you this, since we're talking about happiness. I'm sure there's people, and we're talking about getting unstuck. We've talked about like saying no and those sorts of things. What would be one of the first steps you would suggest in someone finding their happiness? If they're just like, I don't like my job. What am I going to do? They don't know actually anything. Because there's a lot of people that just don't know. They just have this feeling.
Yeah, they're numb.
Right.
Well, I would say, I'm going to say two things. Mm-hmm. I believe that deep down in our soul, we all know like what we came here to do and we came here to be. However, most of us have been like numbed out. And for some people, they've been numb for such a long time that accessing that truth is like finding, the tip at the bottom of the iceberg at the bottom of the ocean. So there's two things that I would really say that are one is really fun. I always like to motivate people doing things that are fun, because whenever people hear the word work on myself, homework, immediately the brain, as you know, as a hypnotherapist, the brain goes, shuts down. I don't want to work.
Hey, fun on myself sounds good too.
So I would say a couple things. First, I would say, the first one is that people need to unnumb themselves. So that would be the first question that I would ask, let's say somebody that I was working with, one-on-one, would be like, well, where do you numb yourself out? Because they're not going to be able to tell me what makes them happy if they can't even feel. The fun part of this, though, is this is something that I've always known, and I've always said to many people that I've worked with, is go back in time, even through hypnosis or from your memory, and think about which game was your favorite game to play when you were a child. And then you'll start being a little bit warmer about what makes you happy. I'll give you an example. I've heard people say, Legos. Okay, and then I say, okay, we'll start building something, even something small. But even that would give them like a little bit of like, oh, yay, this brings back memories. For me, you're going to laugh because it's just, so perfect. My favorite game was to play house. And I had a babysitter, and there were many children there. And my little boyfriend, who was 5, he was my husband, and all the kids there were my children. And so I always laugh because, when people know my life story, they know, I have children, but I also have adopted children, and I have, schools with, many adopted children. And so I basically manifested the game that I used to play as a child. So the fun part is start with, what did you do when you were a child that you stopped doing? Because a lot of people really, they were doing it as a child, but somewhere along the way, somebody shut it down. Either somebody in their family or a teacher or themselves.
Right.
But I always say to people that say like, well, I don't know. I say, okay, well, let's think of something you did as a child that you really enjoyed. If they say, I like to go to the beach, I'll say, okay, you need to start going to the beach every day for 30 days. Or you need to take a vacation to a beach if you don't live near one.
Right.
So I think that in order to remember what makes us happy, if that's very far away from where we're at, we need to take baby steps.
Right. Yeah.
So those are two things that I would start with.
I like to add to that when they don't have as much patience with themselves, they always know what they don't want, right? Everyone knows what they don't want. So what if you flip it? If you don't want this, then you want what? What's the opposite? Yeah. I don't want to go to that job. So you want a different job.
Yeah.
I'm not happy in this relationship. I want to be in a happy relationship. So how do you get there? Kind of thing. Yeah. So we start jogging stuff, and absolutely about going to your childhood and all of those things to just sort of shake you up inside to get some memories, right? To get those feelings going, because I believe, and I think we're a lot alike in some ways, you and I, because we've known each other for a little bit, is that it starts down here. It's not up here. It's down here. It's where we live. It's who we are. It's where all those memories and experiences and emotions are held, because this has been like the employee and the employer, and we've let the employee run the office and the shop for so long, and the boss has taken vacation for so long, we need to bring him back to work, right?
Yeah.
To find out, because I agree with you too, in that deep down we all really know. It's just how do we get there? How do we find it? How do we allow ourselves to find it? Right.
A lot of people have told me over the years, though, that that's one of the reasons why I wrote down a map. I basically wrote a manual. So many people have said things like, oh, I would love to have a job where I get to travel, but that's never going to happen. And so I actually, specifically wrote, for example, how did I get paid to travel? And I even at one point I even wrote a whole blog of ways that people paid me to travel. So for a lot of people, I think that sometimes they actually don't think that some of these things are possible because maybe no one around them has ever done it.
Right.
So it's just in the impossible category. So even hearing from someone that's done it, it's like, oh wow,
and then their brain
can do it. That's a plants a seed. We're coming on a new moon this Thursday where we're always planting a seed. So I always say, when people say to me things like impossible, how people say that's I'm possible. I don't really believe that, anything is impossible. There's our timer.
That's our timer. I always try to have to figure out how to turn it off.
I was going to say one of the things I really encourage people to do is to read biographies and to study the lives of people who are great. And the reason why is because somebody has already done pretty much whatever you want to do. Whoever's watching this, it's like, okay, I would really love to retire at, 35 and live in the Bahamas. Okay, well, I'm sure there's somebody that's already done that, and they've probably written a book about it.
Right.
You know, go and follow the people that are doing, you know, the right things. And on the final note, I harp on this all the time because it's just something I see happen way too much, is that people ask for advice from the wrong people. So I always say, don't ask for how to do anything from someone who doesn't have what you want. So like I consider myself, you know, pretty happy. Most people that know me would say that I'm a pretty happy gal. So I wrote about happiness. That's, you know, that's kind of what I would like to, you know, leave people with, is find somebody who's done what you want to do and copy them.
They put the map out already, right?
Yeah, it's not really rocket science. You know, there's a lot of people on the planet that are doing amazing things, and it's just a question of, you know, now in the internet, it's so easy to find people. You know, it's so easy to find. You don't even have to read a 400-page biography. You could go to YouTube and watch a 5-minute video of how-to. There's so many how-to videos on YouTube.
I go to it all the time when I need to figure something out.
Me too.
Before we go, I want to remind all the viewers that we have some great hosts and other shows. We have Paul Ramsey, the fat hypnotist, who takes you on his journey of losing weight. And we have Kaz Riley, Trancing in the Sheets. She's really wonderful about talking about sexual dysfunction, things like that, along with hypnosis. Dee Dee Berg with Brain Hacks 101. I think it's Brain Hacks 101. All I know is that Dee Dee does these wonderful things that help you use your mind in a very effective and quick manner in changing your ways about you. And we have several other wonderful hosts. So please tune back in for other shows that we have going on. And Micaela, what is the last final thing? And where also can they find you?
The best place to find my book is on Amazon. It's called Happiness is Not a Destination, 50 Countries, 50 Years, 50 Lessons. And I'm on Facebook under Miracle Catcher, and Instagram, I Create Miracles.
And is there any website or anything that they need, or is that all we need?
That's the best place to reach me right now.
Great.
Facebook or Instagram.
Okay, cool. And then you can find me on Facebook or also hypnosisla.com. Thank you so much for watching this episode. It was great having you. And see everyone next time. Thank you.